Hey, my name's Sean, and I'd like to share about my experience living and growing up with osteogenesis imperfecta. I'm 29 years old, and I was diagnosed when I was like one or two, when the first time I broke a bone when I was a baby. And I inherited it from my father, and he didn't know about it because, well, at that time, it wasn't very popular. And I was just like a little baby, and I think I was walking and I fell, just a very mild fall. They brought me to the hospital. They didn't know what's wrong. They took me away, and they were concerned that I was abused by my parents. Like, this was completely unheard of. So they did a bunch of tests on me, and they found out I had osteogenesis imperfecta. And yeah, so this is my story about that. So growing up, I'm really fortunate to have a mild case. I've broken about 14 bones in my life, something around that. I used to keep track when I was younger, but fortunately, at around 14 years old, I stopped breaking bones. When I was 14, I broke a total of 3 times in a year, which was a lot for me. But after that, I've only fractured like 1 time. And I'd like to share a little about my experience living with this. So, growing up, my parents were really, really, really protective over me, rightfully so, because a big fear that loomed on all of or on their heads was that I could break a bone and become crippled for the rest of my life and like live in a wheelchair. So my mom would always like follow me when I was walking and make sure I don't fall. I wasn't allowed to do like PE, physical education in school. Obviously, I never played like contact sports like basketball and stuff. Fortunately, I ran around the playground and played with my friends here and there, and like there were times I did uh, participate in physical activities, but despite that, there were still accidents. I would trip here or there, or I would be an adventurous kid, that just wants to be part of like the other kids. So one time when I was in kindergarten, I wanted to go on the monkey bars because I really, really wanted to, and there was a kid behind me that kind of rushed me, and I fell and broke a bone. Or one time, I was actually allowed to join PE for the first time ever, and I was so excited. I was skipping along. We were doing like a skipping drill, and I fell and broke my arm. So I guess a lot of my breaks have been because, like, as a kid, you really want to play. And if you aren't given that opportunity to really be in your body and gain that hand eye coordination, when you do actually play, you're going to have an easier time, like, fumbling over or making a mistake. And a lot of my breaks kind of happened like that, where just as an eager kid, I didn't think there would be any harm. And you never know where the harm can come. You can do a lot of physical activity and nothing happens, and then just one unfortunate moment, and something can happen. So I pretty much lived excluded from like doing all of these activities, and a lot of my childhood I spent on the computer. And at this time, like, the computer was first, it wasn't as popular as it is nowadays. I guess it's like all the kids do that. So yeah, a lot of my childhood was spent in like front of screens. um, at home, I never walked like alone until I was like 14. My parents were very protective over me, right? And so I'm the type of person that really loves exploring and adventure. Like, I even have this, and the story has a positive turn. Um, but I just really want to illustrate this aspect of childhood. Like, it's something I've had to deal with in my adult life, like psychologically, right? Like being excluded from things, not feeling like I fit in, going on my own path, uh, stuff like that. Even feeling fragile. Like, sometimes now I'll bump into something and I'll have anxiety, like, oh, did I break a bone? Because there's been times I've broken bones, and it didn't even really feel that painful. because of the numbing effect at first. There was one time, I was playing uh, with a kid at school, and he was being rough with me. I didn't like it, so I kind of pushed him away with my arm. A very mild tap. I broke a bone, and then I went to do a final. And in the final exam, my hand was trembling, and I was like, "No, this can't be." Like it was just a very mild tap. And so like there's been experiences like this where it's been hard to trust my body sometimes, even as an adult, but it does get better. It does get a lot better. Now I'm 29, so I'd say like 14 was the last big break I've had. Um, and since then, I have explored the world. I've been to over 20 countries, solo backpacking. I've hiked countless mountains. I've rock climbed. I've swam in deep snorkeling waters. I push myself. I love. I push myself to do physical activities that A, I'm very comfortable and cautious with, but B, that most people don't have the courage or drive to do. I think a lot of my life is kind of making up for that time, but it's in a really positive light. I've hiked like Syorexan, Mount Jeju. I've done like trips around the U.S. Hiked El Capitan in Yosemite. Like I've hiked it in the Grand Canyon, like a 20-mile hike down and up in the rim. Like hiking has been a passion of mine because it feels very relatively safe. I love playing and like jumping on rocks and stuff when I feel safe, when I feel very capable. I'm very, very cautious, but I'm also adventurous and explorative. And um, so like growing up and living with this, it it's definitely shaped my personality. I love video games. I love like anime. I've been to Japan. I lived in Japan for 6 months. Um, some of the jobs I've had, I've done sales. I've worked in restaurants as a server and a busser, and right now I'm working at a boba shop. Uh, I've done life coaching. I've helped do with relationship coaching. Um, so what I'm trying to say is that I guess I really feel like I have the freedom to do whatever job I want, and to live like the life I want, with the exception of maybe not like not engaging in physical contact sports like snowboarding or skiing. And I'm someone that loves nature, and I really explore and indulge in it. Like I've even done some rock climbing, right? Nothing crazy. But what I'm trying to say is that this this has gotten better. And even though there's a lot of just like psychological and emotional stuff to deal with along with all of this stuff, it also helps connect with people. There's many people out there, whether they have osteogenesis imperfecta or not, that have suffered some sort of um, impediment or like restriction when they were kids. It's a lot more common than you'd expect. Another thing I feel like I've gained from this is I feel like I've gained a lot of internal strength. Like because when you have to go through something so hard as a kid, you gain like you've dealt with something a lot of kids don't have to deal with. Like yeah, it's hard and maybe it feels lonely and scary and worrisome at times, right? But um dealing with that, it puts a perspective on like other things in life, like other difficult things. Like for instance, like I'm an entrepreneur. I like I'm planning on like starting a business, like a restaurant. I've started businesses in the past. That's something that takes like emotional strength and courage to do. Um, and certainly like going through all of those fractures and those breaks, it's not like something I think about too often anymore, but yeah, it's something that definitely has helped me put perspective on things in life, and like difficulty on things. Um, so yeah, I guess um, what I want to say, there there certainly is, like, there are effects beyond, just like with COVID, for instance. We went through COVID, and now the landscape, like maybe people use Zoom more. Maybe there's a little more anxiety surrounding crowded areas. Stuff like this. Like there's byproducts to COVID, even though it's settled down. We have vaccines and all that. There still has been like an effect to how we handle life. So when I was a kid, I used to think like, okay, when you grow up, like it gets easier, and it does, but it also shapes, like, yeah, it shapes you. I guess that's pretty obvious though. Looking back, um, it was really hard for me to like not feel independent. My father, he wasn't diagnosed with OI until I was. And so he actually lived a relatively normal childhood with all of his breaks. He always thought it was a fluke, that like there was nothing, he didn't have anything. That's what he always thought about himself, and the other kids were just teasing him. I don't know the best strategy to handle this. I'm, again, very fortunate to have a mild case. My father, played basketball, played soccer, and he had about as many breaks as I did, about like 14 as well, um, something around that. And so there's a really fine line between like independence and trusting your kid, the childhood like urge to explore and do things. I'd like to share a story. There's this one national park in Utah. It's called Goblin Valley National Park, and it's just a bunch of rocks. It's just a bunch of rocks. There's no like route or courses or hikes that are set out, really. There's one, but it's all about exploring, right? It's all about jumping and climbing and bouldering and running and going on top of these rocks, and just being a kid as an adult, right? And so I went there, and it was really, really, really healing. That was a really, really important moment for me, to be a kid and to jungle gym and to climb. I've lived in Peru, and people in Peru, they know how to climb trees when they're like 3 or 5, and they can climb up like monkeys. Like some of the natives there, like it's really, really impressive. There's this deep, deep, like there's this deep yearning inside of me to be in my body, to dance, to sing, to express myself. When I was a kid, I was always like a science and math nerd. Like I loved calculus and algebra and all that, and biology, chemistry. All of that really fascinated me as a kid. Like English literature, not so much. And I think like I guess a big reason for that was for me being in my mind, like really in my mind, is because of this. And now that I've grown up, like, and I've had independence, there's been this deep yearning in me to like explore the other side. Even at my boba job, um, there's like one employee we have that has done sports his whole life, and he can make boba like twice as fast as me, make the drinks twice as fast. And of course I have skills that like he doesn't have. Like I have like managerial skills and stuff like that. But the reason I want to the reason I'm highlighting this is because as humans, we need to explore our body. Like that's a need we can either shove down and it'll come up, as it did in my childhood whenever I was like adventurous away from adults, and then accidents happen because I had to be a rascal or naughty to do it because I wasn't allowed to do it. Like that stuff just happens, right? As a kid, you don't know, and you don't know. Like I could have done that and nothing could have happened, right? So if you have like a milder case of this, physical activity, like fun physical activity, it needs to be part of your life. Like there needs to be something that feels safe enough and that there's enough trust in. When I was, I had a really bad fracture in third grade. I broke my femur just from jumping and tripping. And to recover from that, I joined the swim team for 2 years. And while that was really fun, it wasn't like really my cup of tea. Like it got very boring. It's just swimming laps over and over. There's not too much play in it. Sure, there's kids that joined the swim team and loved it and did it. But I think it's really important to find some form of physical embodiment that feels safe, whether it's dancing, whether it's tennis, even. Just some form of being in your body is very important. Um, uh, yeah, some form of play, some form of freedom there. And so if you're dealing with this and you're a kid, like you're dealing with this right now, I would seriously, um, I guess, just try to explore things that you would feel safe and comfortable doing under maybe parent supervision, under something. And the thing is, with like physical activities, the more you do them, the more skilled and dexterous and safer they become, and the more competent and like now I hike and I rock climb and I do very dangerous things, but because I've done this over years now, I feel very safe and I rarely trip or fall. Like I'm hyper vigilant when I do these things. And there's like a chart, right? With skill, the safety also goes up. The only risk when doing these types of things is like overconfidence. But I think like having osteogenesis imperfecta has really helped me to err on the side of overly safe. Um, and so yeah, that I guess that's my advice with dealing with this. If that's something you'd uh, kind of want through my experience, just find some way to be to express yourself in your body and to be in your body and to have some sort form of physical activity. Um, as a kid, that I think that would have helped me a lot as an adult, both with my confidence, with my dexterity and my ability now, um, with a lot of things. I think having a part of that, whether it's whatever it is, whatever it would be, something that feels relatively safe. Even yoga, like yoga, I don't know if that's too fun for kids. That's something I like to do now. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'd love to like answer. I'd love to help with like anything. Coming out of like that period of restriction and just being very worried about my body, that's been like the hugest blessing of my life. Like the fact that this does get better and it does, like, um, you know, and you are able to live a normal life, at least with the mild form of osteogenesis imperfecta, um, like a very, very normal life. And not only that, it's a blessing in many ways. It gives like insight, depth, character. Like there's a lot of pros you gain from this, for going through that. And there's also ways to make it a little gentler and more, I don't know, less extreme. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about my experience. Let me know if this helped, and yeah, have fun and good luck out there.